When you're ready to leave today, you can get onto any boat you'd like. They leave about every 30 minutes. There's schedules posted around the island in blue. All right, then before I start with the fun stuff, I'm gonna ask that y'all take like 1 or 2 steps towards me just to make a little more room. Thank you all so much.
What up, you guys? Welcome. It is True Crime Connections. I'm Tiffany, your host. We're on location this week. We are on Alcatraz Island. Guests today are going to be Ken Wilder, which is the nephew of John and Clarence Alcatraz, who have escaped. And you're about to hear a completely different story about what happened to John, Clarence, and Frank. Everything you thought you knew, you did not. Let's get into it.
Okay, I'm Mike, and I'm the co-author of the book, Alcatraz, The Last Escape.
And I'm Ken Widner. I'm related to John and Clarence Anglin, and I helped Mike write this book, which is Alcatraz, The Last Escape. And I hope you thoroughly enjoy it.
Right.
Radio.
Was that the original station was? Like, or is that always there? Or did they?
No, that's always been.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, when they went right up under it. They were dogs, but you got to remember it's like 10:30 at night, wolf fog.
Yeah.
And the guys, they already know the head count has occurred, so they know where everybody's in the cell, right?
Right.
So they're not expecting anybody to get out.
Right.
You're not like, oh, I actually drove this here.
Did you? That's cool.
They let me drive it out here one time.
Hi, that's
Threw me
cool.
inside it. Yeah. The head park ranger, Cantrell, at the time, he drove my mom and her sister and stuff around in it. She stopped and gets out and I take off.
That's
Driving up and down the road and three.
Is that when nobody was here?
No, the whole bunch of everybody there. We had to beat the horn to get this one.
You mad? I'm excited.
I'm not that up to date. The familiar with what research I did on my own. No. Mike knows probably more about tell you why they put certain things in certain areas. What that used to be and what it became. He's very knowledgeable about the whole island. So
This is a military base before it was a prison?
I think it originally started off as a military base.
Yeah.
They turned it into a military prison. And then at some point in time, they turned it into a federal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in San Francisco, you have the Presidio, which is where the Army housed the soldiers for San Francisco. And then you got into trouble, they'd send you here to Alcatraz.
But that's what it was. The city,
Do you want to?
Oh yeah, that's how I lead around. But we go. Yeah.
You guys lead the way. That's a cool gadget you got there. I'm saying. It zooms and it, like, if you wanted to like focus on your face, you can do all kinds of stuff and it just follows you.
Well, one of the things with the plants here that the guards had on the southern part of the island. Or, I'm sorry, the northern part. The families were actually living on the island. They had like apartments.
Okay.
And so there were kids living here. And a lot of the women planted the plants. That's where a lot of it came from. They just planted the garden and just kind of make it a little nicer. So there's, I'm sure it was
Right.
They were put back in their cell. Yeah, some of them worked around on these areas. I mean, you stop to think, even if they're down there on the dock, where are they going?
Right.
That
They're not going anywhere.
the final wall of your prison.
Right.
And one of the things we had in the book was that, well, the guards have had orders of shoot to kill if somebody tried to escape.
Right.
So if you're swimming in the water, you're trying to get away, you're not going to make it.
Right.
And it's pretty much why, it's very few prisoners ever tried to escape during the day.
There was
So- and,
that's right.
Well, and those who did wound up dead.
Right.
As a prison, there was a guard had orders to shoot and kill. That's all anybody's behind. You just wonder. They don't really. They would shoot and ask questions later. They were.
We're dead.
That right there, that's Angel Island right there.
Okay. That's where they went. It left
No.
the rafts and
No.
stuff, isn't
Well,
it?
that's where the raft washed up.
Okay.
They
They
never,
wanted to do the thing.
Right.
they were thinking
I
for
thought
a
they
time.
planted it there.
There was a time when they were planning on going to Angel Island and they were thinking about what do we want to do? And they abandoned that idea.
That's the first place they're gonna look.
But exactly. And actually, Alan West said after the escape was discovered, he said they were going to go to Angel Island.
No.
That's what he thought they were doing.
I think the last documentary I watched on it. I just love that all the inmates were in on it, making noise every time they heard
Well,
them doing
a
stuff.
lot of them knew about it. A lot of them participated as far as like either giving the raincoats up or you had some that very few people know actually supplied items to them.
Right.
But most of them knew about that it's going to happen. And, to them, it was like Whitey Bulger said in one of his letters that, everyone in Alcatraz escaped that night. 3 got off the island, but everybody was escaping with them. And they would lay in their beds. He said he laid in with bed that night. All night.
Crying.
Just thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Please don't get caught.
Right. Well, one of the inmates, Robert Scheiblein, who heard when they crawled through the little air vent to get out to the roof, and they pushed off the top, and made a big thud. And Robert Scheiblein said that he thought that's when they got caught, that they got, that they found out about it, and that was the end of it. And then Whitey, he started making noise to distract the guards from the horns,
Right.
banging on the cells, and
Yeah, see, they actually have known that they came right down through this way. So you came over here. Beep, beep, beep.
I don't know where he's going.
Trying to make a wide turn. So they actually kind of came down through this direction. And now you got a fence in, but they actually went down that direction and they put it into the wall. So if you kind of look, it's not, if you went down here to the very edge.
All right. We were walking how they got out of here.
Yeah. That they actually kind of put up on it. It's actually just on the other side. You can't see that hill. There's a beach area down there, a little small beach area. You can see that when they put the raft in their water, they just basically hugged the side of the island and just slowly made its way. And you can see the guard tower. Okay. So the only chance of them ever being seen was that little short distance between about that point and the guard tower. But as soon as they got to that guard tower, they're right there at the docks. So once you make it up under that docks, you can't be seen anymore. Because the guard tower is looking down, he's looking at the docks. So you have no way of knowing where they're at.
Right.
And so then the prison boat is sitting there in the dock. They tie up to the prison boat with a 150-foot electrical cord that they had stolen, which is documented and missing. And they waited. And when that prison boat pulled out, it's like that one would have been, not just like that, but that boat. And they go behind it. They just allow it to pull them. And it's something they did as kids. They used to do that when they were kids.
Because they were poor and they couldn't afford rafts and stuff.
Oh yeah. So as kids, John and Clarence and Alfred, along with Fred Breezy, as kids, they would get together and they would go down to these docks where these boats were going into. You probably know where the Halifax River is.
Yeah.
It feeds into Tampa Bay. So they would get up under the docks, and then as people would come, fishermen would come, and they're parking their boats. Well, they would tie up to the boat, to the motor, and then when they would take off, they had a piece of wood, and they would like ski behind it until either they fell off or the guy, whoever was, the boat person said, "Oh my gosh, somebody behind it." So they did that as kids. Well, they used that same technology, that same skill set down here, and they did that exact same thing. So John realized early on, you're not going to swim across this.
No.
You're not going to paddle across this. But you could use that boat and do the exact same scenario they did as kids.
That is super
And so,
smart. With Alcatraz's own boat, their own security.
Only their own prison boat is what aided them in getting. All they had to do, too, is, like I said, once you go around the corner of that island, the tip of this island where you were let off just a few minutes ago, come Sunday, that's where they're going to drop 2,000 people to do the Alcatraz escape from Alcatraz Island. The reason they do it there is because if you look at the way water comes across, it's stronger here on the currents than on the other side.
Okay.
And so that's the reason why they drop people there. Well, when they rounded that corner with that prison boat, they only had to go just around the corner and let go. And then the current will take them the rest of the way, all the way to where that boat is waiting.
Cohen's boat.
It was the boat that he financed. I'm not sure if he actually owned it, but he financed. Cost it.
Well, yeah, because he was in here with them.
Yeah. He was physically driving.
But he'd only gotten back from being out on bond for 6 months. Only about 4 or 5 weeks before the escape, he returns.
Yeah.
And he gives them the information because he and John worked together in the clothing room.
Yeah.
So they had set up all the plan. And actually, one of the things that happened was there was actually another raft that they had up on the top of the cell block. They abandoned that raft and then created a new raft. We believe it was after when Mickey Cohen came back with the information about the boat that he had procured for them, that they had to revise the raft so that it would be able to be towed, because the original raft didn't have that ability.
They were made out of raincoats.
Yeah. Well, truly, their original plan was early on that we're going to go to Angel Island. That was definitely the original plan. But with Mickey Cohen showing up and being the person that was able to carry the information out of the prison to the England family, the person who helping kind of coordinate the events that were going to occur. He comes back. It occurred 53rd Avenue. But he basically, tells them something. Okay, we've got a boat waiting for you, and then John, because that's when they construct the second raft. They abandoned the first, and they go, no, we're not going to do the second. But they quickly put together one that actually, it was the night of the escape. They had just a few things left to do with it, and so they actually finished it up the night of the escape, which it was really all they did was they added an eye to the front of it, so that they could run the raft. So when they tied up around the rudder of the boat, they're hanging on to it like this, And so there's 2 in the front, 1 in the rear. And they actually used the paddles, not to paddle, but they used it as a rudder, as a way of steering the boat. And they would use that to help so that it's, so your boat would start going like this, right? If you had like a little rudder in the back, you could control which way it goes. And so, like I said, they didn't have to be towed with just around it. And as soon as they let go, right there, they would guarantee that you're either going to hit the mainland or you're going to hit very close to it. You don't have to do a whole lot about it because that's the way the current's taking you. And right out in the center, there's an eyewitness account, a police, San Francisco police officer who witnesses the boat that night. He sees it. He doesn't know what's happening,
Right.
but he sees that boat. So it's documented that actually was there. And when they got to that boat, the boat picked them up. They took off and they went up under the Golden Gate Bridge. They made, we believe they made like a left, went down to what's called Half Moon Bay Harbor, which is just like 10 miles down the coast. They get off, there's an airport that even today doesn't even have a tower. It's like a little small run. And that their friend, Fred Dreesy, was waiting for them in a plane right there. He even tells us later in, 92 when he's meeting with the band, flies them into Mexico. And that's where they stay all the way up until Alfred's death, which they did the cardinal sin of letting him know where they were at. The authorities find out, it ultimately, cost him his life. And the brothers, along with Frank Morris, feared that he gave up more than what he should have. He could have done that, in his death. And so it forced them to leave Mexico and go into Brazil. And that's how they actually went. Was unfortunately the death of the brother.
Right, because he tried to escape when he got electrocuted.
Well, there's a lot of controversy around that. We don't believe he was actually trying to escape because, I mean, he had a parole hearing in February, beginning of February. So why would you try to escape in January? You have a parole hearing in February, and you can, and he's a trustee at this point in time, and he's told my mom and my dad, and me and my sister were with my mom and dad at Christmas time in '63 when they went to visit him in Kilby, and he tells them, right, I got word from my brothers, and I know where they're at. As soon as I make parole, if I make parole in February, I'm going to join them. Well, exactly where they're at. 11 days later, he was killed. They claim trying to escape. But like I keep saying, why would he try to escape if he's got a parole hearing just a few weeks later? I mean, I could understand if he went to the parole hearing and they turned him down and he goes, no, you got several years. I could understand. Oh, but then let me try to escape. But
It sounds like they were trying to get information and might have killed us.
that's exactly.
At the prison, they had an electric chair called the Yellow Mama.
Oh.
Because it was painted yellow. And so what they used to do sometimes was that they would take prisoners to try to get information from them. They'd strap them to the chair and either threaten to turn on the electric chair to electrocute them and get the information before they did, or they'd start turning up the electricity. It'd start to slowly.
They were known for doing that to prisoners.
Right.
That sounds like it's exactly.
It was used for intimidation and for extracting information. And so what we believe happened was that the FBI heard that he knew where they were. This is after the escape.
Yeah, they
So
believe that the picnic table we were all sitting at that day was bugged. Because they put us, I didn't realize this, you can finish it, but I didn't realize this, but when my mom told the story, and we heard it many, many times, they get to the Kilby prison, and rather than them taking them into the prison to meet Alfred, they take the family.
That was the usual procedure.
Yeah, which is the usual procedure. They take the family to the outside of the prison on this grassy area, and there's like 3 picnic tables. One's really, really far away, and they tell my mom and my dad and me and my sister, go sit over there at that picnic table. They were like, my mom was like, great. And so there, you could see the prison wall with a little door, and they said Alfred would come through there and meet y'all in the picnic table. So we go over there, Of course, I'm telling you what I was only 3 years old.
Right.
I have vague memories of it. And so my mom said they're sitting there at the table, and it wasn't too long. Door open. Here comes Alfred. And they're the only people out there in this whole area. They're outside the prison. And Alfred comes over and sits down, and he's eating the Christmas dinner my mom made with state assured. My mom's apologizing to him. I'm sorry, and he's like, I remember my mom saying, well, he said, oh, it doesn't matter. It still tastes the same, And so as they're eating and me and my sister are playing, he pulls out something that the brothers had mailed to him that only he would have known what it was. And he shows it to my mom. He actually gives it to her, and we still have it today. And he said, I got word from our brothers, know where they're at. And I'm up for a parole hearing in February. If I make it, I'm going to do it. And so my mom and them were freaking out. They didn't know what to say. And so, we go home eventually. And then somehow they think that his next letter, the only last letter we ever got from Alfred, and I never knew this about prison, but normally all the prisoners wrote on white paper. If you ever got one that was written on colored paper, like yellow paper, that was an indication that they were in the hole or they were in solitary confinement. I didn't know that that's what that meant. So my grandmother gets a letter from him the next week, and it's on a yellow piece of paper. Well, we still have the letter. And so she's like, they were like, the family was freaking out. Well, what did Alfred do? I mean, he'd been a model prisoner for the last 5-6 years, had never tried to escape, didn't do anything. He was trying to do it legally by going through the ACLU, trying to get this second conviction overturned. And so they were like, what happened, you know? And then the family gets called like a few days later. Oh, Alfred got electrocuted that night. He was trying to escape with another prisoner and he got electrocuted. And the family was just like, what? I mean, they were just blown away, you know? And so then they sent his body to be autopsied by the local prison. It takes 2 weeks before they get the body to the family. So whenever the body finally shows up at the local funeral home, they call my uncle man, the brother who we eventually find out was involved in some of this stuff, to come down and ID the body. And he goes down and he's told me, I've heard the story many times, and they show him his brother, and he says, yes, that's my brother. He was electrocuted in prison trying to escape. And the funeral director said, oh no, this man wasn't electrocuted. And he turns him over and there's stripes down his back. And he said, this man was beaten. And, the family's poor. They have no way of hiring a lawyer. And Alfred goes to his grave that way. A family always, being told what happened. And so during the 2015 History Channel documentary, that's one of the reasons why we have Alfred exhumed. Because the family wanted to know the truth,
You deserve to know the truth.
We agreed to give them DNA from Alfred if they would exhume him and have a pathologist examine him, do x-rays, which I have the x-rays. We were hoping we would find some like broken bones. We actually had, outside of Art Roderick, who was a retired U.S. Marshal, he had three other U.S. Marshals there, because if they had found something, any broken bones whatsoever, they were going to go file a lawsuit against the state of Alabama. At least that's what we were being told. They didn't find any broken bones. There's some other things we learned about the autopsy later on that I wish you had known at the time. It is what it is. You will never convince me that he was tried and said.
Yeah. Not when he was up
No.
for parole at the
It's
time.
just too much.
You had too much to lose. I mean, if you would have been paroled, you don't need to
But he
escape.
was very hopeful that it was going to be granted to him. So he was very upbeat about it. So why would he suddenly throw that into jeopardy and risk getting caught?
Right.
And what I told Mike was so amazing that I just realized a few days ago. When I go through the FBI file, 17 volumes, thousands of people's that the FBI did and recorded, all the investigation they did, the interviews they did, all the inmates and all throughout multiple prisons and all the family members and the public stuff. They include in the FBI files Alcatraz now, the death of Alfred. They record in there the detailed, what I'm telling you is the narrative. They record all this in the Escape from Alcatraz document. And I was like, well, if they didn't believe that something was going on between him and his brothers, why did they record it into the files that's dedicated to the Escape from Alcatraz?
Right.
It had nothing to do with the death of another prisoner in another prison.
So if he didn't sit at that picnic table and say, I know where they're at, I want to be with them, I'm going to go be with them when I get out. If I get out, he probably would have been alive and would have met them down there.
Yes. If he had not said what he said, I think he would still been alive, would have eventually gotten out, would have eventually gone down there. But that set in motion. And what really kind of it throws even another wild story to Alfred was that, like I said, when the FBI shows up the next day to take over the criminal investigation of this crime scene, one of the things that they did, and it's documented, well documented, they interview every single prisoner at Alcatraz. They go back to every prison that John and Clarence had ever been into, even in former. And interview anybody, any prisoner that had any interaction with him. Like, I don't know what someone 20 years in the past could have given them about, oh, yeah, I didn't, they were Alcatraz 20 years ago. But so they interview every prisoner, interview every single family member, threaten every family member with jail time if they ever found out they knew anything about the escape, where they went, whatever. And so between the family and the inmates, the prisoners, they never once interviewed Alfred. Alfred is sitting in Atlanta prison. He is a brother who participated with them in the bank robbery. He is a family member, and they never interviewed him. So whenever he tells my mom and dad this in Kilby prison, and now all of a sudden now he's dead, what does the FBI do with this information? They go back to Atlanta and they interview his cellmate. And that's where we find out about Uncle Man and Uncle Robert coming and telling him right after the escape that they made it. And that Mickey Cohen was the one who helped them get off the island by supplying the money from the boat. And just like, why did you make this stuff up? Like, why didn't you interview Alfred from the very beginning?
Right.
Like, if they did interview him, they never included it in the documents.
Well, the FBI showed
Not in there anywhere.
at the Widner house the day after the escape. They
Right.
immediately send FBI, and they basically walk into the house, tell everyone to sit down, shut up. We want to ask you some questions. Don't resist us in any way. Very next day.
Yeah.
Because they're the prime suspects of you. We knew you helped them. We know that. We know what you did. But Alfred, they never
Never
went to
even interviewed him.
Huh.
That's
How
crazy.
crazy is that?
Yeah.
or if they did, they purged it. From
Yeah,
the file.
if they did,
They
which
put-
is really hard to believe that they did, but
Right.
they never included it in the files. It's nowhere in there that they ever interviewed him. There's nowhere in there that they ever interviewed Robert Checky, who is the police officer the night of the escape that witnessed the boat. So that's another weird story,
Right.
So here is a San Francisco police officer who eventually becomes a very decorated detective in the San Francisco Police Department. He's out there that night doing, he just got off his, I guess like second shift, late shift. He's out there, which I can understand, smoking, trying to calm down, get ready, before he goes home, goes to bed. And he said, he's at the marina and he looks out and he can see Alcatraz, a little foggy. He said he notices a boat out, like this pristine fishing boat, but the fishing poles aren't like let down on the side. So they're not doing anything. It's not running. All the engines are down and the lights are kind of like flickering every once in a while, like they're having electrical problems, like they're fixing something. Like it flicker and then they go off. And then flicker and go off. And he said he sat there and said, well, that's really strange, what's going on. And then all of a sudden, this big, huge floodlight light comes on, like someone's holding a floodlight, and it shines across the water out toward Alcatraz, and then it goes off. And then all of a sudden, a few minutes later, the boat starts up, the lights come on the boat, and it starts heading toward the Golden Gate Bridge. And then he loses sight of it. So he goes home thinking, this is crazy, And so the next morning he gets up, and of course it's on the news, he escaped. He goes, oh my gosh, that boat had something to do with it. Contacts his supervisor, and he told him what he saw. They then in turn contact the FBI. Well, the FBI comes out and interviews him, and they start basically accusing him of either, why didn't you swim out there and stop it? or why didn't you do this? They actually started almost accusing him of being a part of it. And so he starts getting harassed at work. His coworkers are making fun of him. Like, he said one time he opened his locker and there was a picture of a boat with a sign going, is this the boat that you saw? So he goes to the newspaper. He says, I got to get the story out. And there we have the newspaper article where he tells the story of what happened. And the FBI comes to him, how crazy is this? and says, what can we do to make this go away? He told us this. They came to him and said, what can we do to make this go away? Why would you do that? Here is your best lead in the escape when it first happens.
Because that changed the narrative.
Because one of the things that he thought was there's somewhere in the bay that maybe that boat could be that participated in the escape. And so he was trying to get the FBI to start looking around the bay because there's a lot of marinas, a lot of piers, a lot of boats in San Francisco Bay. See if we can find that boat and find evidence of where the brothers were or the escapees were. And they wouldn't do it. And then when the article comes out, it was about a week later, then they're kind of, the FBI's embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then they start looking for boats in the bay, but they didn't find it in the bays. So that he was trying to do. It's like they could still be here, and we could still possibly find it because he's a police officer. It's like we need to try to arrest them and get them back to the island.
Well, and when you read some of the accounts that they did, like I said, I break the interviews that they did up into like 3 categories. You got prisoners, you got the family, and then you have the public. So anytime someone, and there was some problems too. I mean, some lady saying, "Oh, somebody stole my piggy bank." Seriously, off my windowsill. And I think it was one of them. Well, they send someone to interview her. It's documented. That's documented. They a father and son filling up their car. I think it was somewhere in Oregon. Thinks that they saw a car pull up. These 2 guys. One looked like Frank Morris, so they go and interview them. So they interview these crazy people and document it. But here you got a San Francisco police officer who is telling you something you would think of anybody who had credibility, it would have been,
Absolutely.
And they refuse. You will not find that interview. If it is, just like Alfred, if they did truly document it, it's not in the files that they released.
Is there anything sealed with that story, or is everything unsealed?
No, everything. I'd probably say if you look at all the 17 volumes, I'd probably say maybe 80% of it, maybe 85 is redacted. Anything to do with they won't unseal or unmask any of the interviews that they did with any of the family members, which most of my relatives are dead, except my mom and her sisters. Most of the prisoners that they interviewed are probably dead. They won't unmask any of those. The only people that's unmasking those files right now are John, Clarence, and Frank Morris, and then Alfred. For some reason, they unmasked him. But even Alan West, he was dead whenever they released it to the public, and they still didn't unmask him.
Yeah, I mean they have because Alan West was the 4th member of the escape, and he did not get out and didn't make it. And so a lot of the inside information of how they planned it and executed the escape plan came because of Alan West. So it's actually a benefit for us that they didn't get out. There's a lot of information we weren't known. And even though it clearly shows that it's Alan West doing certain things, his name is redacted in the report.
Right.
But it's Alan West because he's with the inside information.
Yeah, he was supposed to go with them, but they thought he stopped digging his cell, right?
Well, there again, we have some in the book. You're going to read about some inside information that we get in Whitey Bulger, who was there with them. He actually, believe it or not, he didn't participate as far as like digging or helping them in that way. He provided information from when it came to how to survive in currents, and he actually showed them how to make wetsuits, and he showed them how to prepare for cold water, how to get your body acclimated to that environment that they were going to be facing. But it was pretty much, I think, even as you read it, that Alan West was originally part of the original plan, which was go to Angel Island. But when the plan changed, he was not included. He knew nothing about the alternate plan. There's a lot in there in the book that we bring out. And even to the point where Whitey Bulger had said that this is hardly known that Frank Morris was planning to kill West. When they got out, because West was such a loudmouth, racist individual. And he had Frank Morris really felt like that he was a rat. He was going to rat him out. He was a snitch, what they call a snitch. And he felt like that in fact, he said he even had a knife. Anything goes wrong, anything, I'm going to kill Wes. And so the John and Clarence, who were friends with Wes from other prisons, notified him of what was happening. And I think there's a reason why Wes didn't go. Not that he didn't want to go. He was warned not to go.
Gotcha. You were gonna die either way.
Yeah. So, you know, Wes was all about, he wanted the publicity. He wanted to be able to, they wanted him to have that publicity, and they were very happy to let him do it. You know, he wanted to be the bragger about, you know, what happened, and they were very happy to let him be that guy.
Right.
So if you're standing in front of the water tower, it really doesn't see that red right up there. Just welcome.
And you got the misinformation going on again.
Yep.
Why is that?
Sounds good.
Yeah. That was just a good impromptu.
What?
Yes.
So did you ever live in the Tampa Bay area, or were you always in the Pensacola?
No, so like I said, born in Orlando. All of the Anglin family lived and grew up in Ruston. We moved to South Florida. And I was around like 2 and I pretty much grew up there until eventually I retired and moved back down to we moved to Panama City, where we've always wanted to go to the beach.
There's a line.
This is it. This is the
So
cell
we're gonna
house
do the
entrance.
audio tour?
Huh?
We're gonna do the audio tour first?
You
I
guys?
think
Yeah.
so. I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay.
And you get, they tell stories about the prison, and
But it's all in the headphones?
yeah, it's all headphones.
That's
Though from the steam coming off the
Right, but then you're getting out, and it's just cold,
Yeah.
cold.
yeah. Can you imagine? You know, you don't have any clothes on with a bunch of other people taking a shower. No shower curtain, no modesty here. But you know, I guess you pretty much get over that because in the cells you have a toilet, and of course everybody can see the toilets from other cells. Right. So there really is no modesty in this prison. Probably that's true in any prison.
I was just gonna say that.
Well, it'd be worse if you have a cellmate.
Yes.
You know, just go in front of your cellmate.
Well, at least you know that was the one benefit about being here is you were all by yourself in your own cell. You don't have to share it with anyone.
That toilet.
Yeah.
Gotta brush your teeth. There you go, Lise.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, you gotta go, right?
So this right here is an important piece of the whole escape story, because you know when John first arrived at Alcatraz, he's assigned to the kitchen, but at some point in time he gets assigned to the clothing room, and he's working in this clothing room when their friend Mickey Cohen shows up, and you know Mickey Cohen eventually gets assigned to this exact same spot. So now in this exact same area, you have John and you have Mickey Cohen, who they're friends with. You know, and Mickey's in the process of getting bonded out of Alcatraz. He's the only person in the history of Alcatraz to bond out. And so, you know, he's gone for like 7 months, which we believe at that point in time that he's taking the plan information to my uncle in Ruskin, Uncle Man, who eventually is going to be very key in setting up the key players that needs to be in certain positions when the escape occurs. Well, Mickey Cohen comes back to the island 7 months later, and eventually is set back to the clothing room where John is still working. Of course, you know, it's hard to believe all this occurred, and shortly after that, just a few weeks later, the escape occurs. So, you know, he carries out that information. He brings back the information that they needed to know, okay, I have a boat for you. Everything is set up. Your friend is going to be waiting for you at the airport with a plane, which we know that happens. And so Mickey Cohen brings that information back to John. That's when John decides to make a change to the raft. They actually make another raft. And it actually occurs after Mickey comes back. And from that point on, like I said, just a few weeks later, the escape occurs. Very important piece of information, Rick.
Yeah.
Cut hair. Yep. So yeah, so Clarence is the barber in the family.
Okay.
He would cut hair for his brothers, and he actually was very good at it, and he cut hair in other prisons. So naturally, when he gets here, this is what I love about their planning for the escape. They would take things that they already knew how to do, and they would go, well, how can I use this to benefit what we're fixing to do? So as a barber, you're trying to make a dummy head, and you want to make it as real as possible. You want to have hair on it. If it's just a bald-headed person, they're not going to. They're not. Guards go walk by. Oh, that's not real.
Right.
So Clarence is sitting over here. I can see him now. He's trimming the hair, and as it's falling to the floor, he's stepping up close, and it's falling into the cuffs of his pants because they actually didn't want. They would check. They didn't want people carrying hair out of here for whatever reason. Maybe they suspected something, but he would let it fall into the cup of his pants, and then he would walk back to his cell and do his foot like that and get the hair out, and they would collect it, and eventually it went onto the head of the dummy. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Just did you need schooling?
Education does not equivalent to not street smarts. I mean, this is street smart shit. Sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like when you think about some of the tools they made, like when they break into the corridor, because it's dark, you got to think it's at night too, so you don't have any like normal light coming in, and you're in an enclosed environment. They're trying to make items that they need, like the heads and the grates, so they need light. Well, John creates, and whoever heard of this, he makes a homemade flashlight. And they find it later, and the FBI documents it in the documents that it is the most intriguing thing they'd ever seen. He makes a homemade flashlight that he uses behind the cells while he's in there working, so he can see what he's doing.
Wow.
and then they make a periscope, kind of like you would think of a little kid, where it was made out of paper, and it had a mirror at one end and a mirror at the other end. And so they used it on the night of the escape. When they lifted the vent off, they took that periscope and looked up around to see if there was any guards up there before they ventured out onto the roof.
Wow.
Just detailed planning to the nth degree. And that's the reason I've always said, and I've told people in arguments here, is that these men did not do this kind of an elaborate escape. Detailed planning to get down to the water and then go, now what do we do? They had a plan when they got to the water. It already knew what the plan was. The plan was, there's a boat waiting right out there for me. How do I get there?
This way?
Actually, it would be. It would be right out this way. Well, no, on the other side. I'm sorry.
Use the bathroom.
So on the other side.
Yeah, I had to.
So that's Angel Island. Now I can imagine when they come into the water, I can imagine that they probably said to themselves, "There's Angel Island. It looks very close, doesn't it?" It's actually 2.5 miles away.
Okay.
So it's not as close as you think it is.
Right.
The mainland, which is on this side of the prison, is actually close. It's 1.5 miles. So, I can imagine if I walked out there and I saw that, you could, oh my gosh, I can see freedom.
Right.
I'm sure it was very tempting to go that direction.
Oh yeah, I mean, but there's your guard tower.
There's your guard tower right there. There's your docks. So as soon as they went up under those docks, they're hidden. They hook to the prison boat. They go around that corner, and they release, and the boat's waiting for them. That's actually, I mean, how simple could that be?
It worked out beautifully.
Well, you know, and during the Expedition Unknown, Josh Gates and myself and one of the FBI guys, we decided to reenact this tow in Expedition Unknown. Now, they wouldn't let us come to the dock, but Josh and us put in just off from the shore here, and we had a boat that we were hooked to, very similar to what would have happened with them. And they towed us all the way across the bay in 6-foot waves that were out in this ocean, way rougher than what it was the night they left. And so we made it all the way across to the other side. And I was like, if we can do it in that kind of conditions, it would have been no problem for them at night, with calm conditions and a little gentle breeze blowing, as I like to say, cold ass water. But you got to remember too, they had wetsuits, so you know, even if they got wet, it was not as bad as that you would have thought it would have been.
So when I went to the bathroom, that on the record. There was one of the park people here, not a ranger, but a worker, and I asked her about the inmate that was here, and there is a bookstore in there. She said he's in there.
Oh, okay.
So I thought,
After
the only one that
after
is
a
not is
Monopoly game.
Times Square. Times Square is
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, Times Square is not.
but the streets, yeah.
Not-
So they were always advised not to put the
Not to
brothers
put them together.
next to each other.
They were
then you
warned.
can see.
They were warned. And we even told them they got the guitar on their own cell. It's supposed to be over here.
What is?
That guitar is Clarence.
Clarence
supposed to be over
was the
here.
guitar player.
Oh. So one of their one of your aunts she was in beauty school.
Well, no. So when the kids were small, my grandfather was very strict about they couldn't, you know, he was very strict about that when they were small. He wanted them to stay in the house at night, didn't want to get out. Well, their older sister, this was a long time ago, you know, she wore a wig, as most women did back then, and they had these styrofoam heads that they would put the wigs on. Well, the boys learned they would take the head with the wig, and they would put it in their bed to fool my grandfather, their father, that they thought they were still in bed, and they would sneak out of the house. So they were actually doing this as kids.
Right. I mean, really, everything they did as kids came back to
Yeah.
help them.
a lot of the skills that they learned as little kids, things that they did, little small things, were became instrumental in the escape. So, you know, like the towing of the boat. I mean, they did that as kids, not with boats, but they did it with other trying to ski behind a boat. And then, of course, the dummy heads are not the first time they ever made one. You know, and so all of this is things that they did. And like most people don't even know why they named them what they named them. Like Oink was the nickname they used to give Alfred. And Oscar was the nickname that they had for, I think it was John. So they named their heads names that they used as kids. And the thing about this is that John and Clarence made every one of the heads, including Frank Morris's. Clarence is the one who made Frank Morris's head. So they made all the heads, they made all the event covers, but it totally goes against the story that you hear from, you know, from here and from the movie. But all of this is documented not from us, but from the FBI files. That's where all this is documented at.
So they must have found out through just asking the inmates.
Well, what they did
a lot of
was
it
they
came from
interviewed-
Alan West.
Yeah, they interviewed Alan West. So
He was the inside man.
You crawled through the hole.
I crawled through that one.
This one?
Yeah, that one right
What
there.
did you experience?
Well, you know, that he was challenging me. He said, do you think you could go through that? And I said, sure, I could do it.
Are you Bill?
No, I'm Ken. I'm
Okay.
Ken Widner.
You were here?
Oh yeah, these are my uncles. These were my uncles. Yeah. So anyway, when we were here doing the shooting of 2015, the park ranger at that time said, well, "You want to try to go through there?" And I said, "Sure." I took my coat off. I laid down. And I crawled through it. You could do it.
And it landed you in that.
I was in the corridor. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yep. So it's definitely doable. I proved it. And hey, like I said, I even, I did the triathlon 2016. I proved you can, and if you had to and you wanted to, you could swim from here. Like this coming Sunday, 2,000 people will do it.
Right.
Yeah. So I wonder what they tell people on Sunday. Don't go outside and look at these 2,000 people doing it. I mean, I swear you could not. He was like, when I shut the door, put your hand in front of your face, and I could not see anything. I mean, totally nothing.
Going to hold. This is all she wrote. My God, I could not.
And when you came in here, they would make you strip down. You were actually in here naked. That was actually true. Even in the Alcatraz movie, they had a little cot on the floor. You had a toilet to use the restroom in, and you pretty much were in here naked. And they would shut this, but then they would turn around and shut that door. So you didn't know when they were going to let you out. They never even let you know, oh, you're in here for a week. No, they just shut the door and they left. And then they would come back and bring you food, and then they would shut the door. You would eat your food in the dark. So everything was in the dark.
And it's so cold. If I was
Yes.
naked right now, I would be in tears.
Well, I saw a former inmate talk about that, and he said the way that he tried to stay as warm as he could was you would be on your hands and knees, and you'd be kind of like this to hold to try to keep your body temperature. That you had to be sort of not curled up, but just like on your hands and knees, and just kind of like.
I can't even imagine. How would you even sleep? At night.
There's no way.
No, well, you wouldn't even know when night was.
Right.
It's night the whole time.
Yeah, it's all night.
There's no like food slaughter.
No.
Well, they would
go
open
in.
the door, and you'd all of a sudden get this light for a few minutes, and they would feed you, and then they would shut the door back. But you got to remember too, when they do that, all of a sudden now your eyes go,
Right.
You lose all that night light, night vision that you would,
Right.
and then all of a sudden now you're sitting there trying to figure out how to eat, and you can't even see anything. Yeah, it would be crazy.
Most inmates did not repeat the experience.
No. It's the reason why I don't think they did it once. They never came back.
Lesson learned.
Mhm. But I will have to say now, if these were troublemakers here, I think I would have been a troublemaker to have a big cell like this. Yeah, they're huge. Now, it doesn't look like the ones on top are that large, but the ones on the bottom are very large.
Yeah.
This is what you got if you were bad.
I
That's
guess.
like the bad.
Yeah, that's the bad.
But
These were maybe they were the high profile type people that wound up here. Well, I don't think Mickey Cohen was in one of these, and I know Al Capone wasn't because they showed him in one of his cells, and he's not as large as that. So
Direct commitment. That's how they frame it.
Yep.
Direct.
Well, you look at all the other ones, and it's transferred.
Yeah.
Transferred. This was a direct commit.
Right.
He's one of the very few that was a direct commit.
and paroled or
And bonded
out.
out.
Right.
He was the only one to bond out.
He looks like a shady character.
He was I think he killed a couple. I know at least one that they know of that they tried to get him on.
Well, yeah, self-defense.
well, it was self-defense in his maneuvering currents and how to don't panic. I mean, he told them many times, you know, don't fight the currents, let the currents be your friend.
Right.
Which is pretty much what we do in the swim.
Right.
You let the currents be your friend. You don't fight them, otherwise you're never gonna survive.
You're gonna lose, yeah.
So they
So-
figure out.
They were over here.
So this is where they catch the boat at. This is where they start, the prison boat pulls them. Prison boat comes around this direction, okay? Mm-hmm. And so they're heading to some docks that's over here, the prison boat. So as they get about right here, all you have to do is let go here, and the current's going this direction, right? So the prison boat continues on to the docks. They're going this direction, and right about out here is that boat that's waiting for them. Here's the marina, and the prison boat's halfway in between. And they go to that prison bus, and then they go up under the Golden Gate.
That's still a lot to swim.
Well, they were in a boat. They didn't have a raft.
Oh, right.
Now, I swam that. I didn't have a boat during that time.
Now this right here, these are the industries buildings. These are where they worked, where they had shops, and they would get paid money for working. They were getting paid like pennies an hour, hardly anything. And then these right here are where the families lived on this side of the island. Right. Those are the quarters for the families, and they had children living there, and families, and homes, and they had a whole little community going. But they never went. But the families never went into the cell block.
No.
They were kept separated.
And these were pretty much burned down.
Yeah, those are gone now. And these are here, but they're just, there's nothing there.
Kind of dilapidated, about to fall down.
They're empty.
Ruins.
Yeah.
How did
You
these
know,
burn down?
They believe that's what they were saying. They either believe the Indians during the occupation burned it down, or they say that the people that were trying to evict them,
Trying to get them off the island.
tried to get them off the island, burned it down.
Nobody
I don't
knows.
know. Nobody knows. No one really knows.
But everything had to be brought to the island to keep it going.
Right.
Food, supplies.
So yeah, that's the reason why you have water tower, right? You had to bring water over, and that's what fed the whole prison. So running Alcatraz was very expensive.
Yes.
It was
imagine.
it was, like they said, the average, for a federal prison, the average inmate, it cost the federal government at the time of Alcatraz about $3 an inmate to run
Per day?
per day. And for Alcatraz, it was $10 a day.
Wow.
And because you had a small number of, because there was approximately 250, 60 inmates at any given time in Alcatraz. And you had, I think it was 3 to 1. I think it was 3 inmates for 1 guard, whereas other prisons it was like 10 to 1. You know, so you had more guards for fewer prisoners, and everything had to be shipped here. So even, because a lot of people believe, even Whitey Bulger even believed that because of the escape, they closed the prison. You know, that they were so embarrassed, and that it was not escape-proof anymore, their reputation was ruined. But even before the escape, they were already going to close down the prison because of the cost. Because millions were needed to renovate because of the, you know, just I mean, you see it, it's just kind of dilapidated because of the salt air, the wind, and the weather.
So really, they just would have ended up back at one of the prisons they had already
At some point in
escaped
time,
from.
they didn't know that.
Well, right.
They all thought that if we can have a successful escape, that'll shut the prison down. Which, you know, in the end, I guess from what I read some of the newspaper accounts, the Robert Kennedy was already, you know, pushing. Prison is too expensive, you know, we need to do something else. There's way cheaper ways to do it on the mainland. And after the escape, it was even noted in the paper, well, this proves that we need to close this down, because now you've got people escaping out of it. It's dilapidated, it's falling apart. This just added icing onto the cake.
Right.
was already kind of being baked anyway. So in a sense, it did pretty much was the final nail in the coffin. Let's close this thing down.
Yeah.
What amazes me about as I watch these people walk through is that, and I've said this many times before in interviews, is that, and it's what really kind of inspired me to write this book, along with the help of Mike, of course, is that most people are walking through here and they really don't. I mean, they're getting the history of Alcatraz, and they're listening to what's being told to them, and truly they're getting the probably true story about how the prison was built and what it was used for and who it housed. But when it comes to the 92 for the 62 escape, most people, they really don't know anything other than what they see on those posters, about my two uncles, John and Clarence. They all they know is they were bad men. Undoubtedly, they were here. They must have done something really, really bad, and they escaped and they died. And that's pretty much what they hear. And so that's what they take back and they tell other people, which is really far from the truth of what actually happened. I mean, there's a huge, big story that most people, if you ask them, I could probably grab anybody and ask them to tell me a little bit about the escape, and they would tell you exactly what, pretty much follow the narrative of the movie.
Right.
That's the movie,
Yeah.
And the movie was probably maybe 90% correct. I mean, 90% false, 10% correct. That's how bad it was. I mean, it's a great movie. I really loved the movie. I mean, I've watched it many times.
Well, it's because they said that they died.
Well, they
Yes.
leave it ambiguous at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
It's open ended.
but I mean, it's a good movie, but it's far from what actually happens. A lot of it's fake, and so makes for a good movie though, but it's not the actual. And so hearing people talk about my uncles in a negative way that didn't even know them, made me say, no, I really want to find out what actually happened, because I never believed that was the story. And as we dug into the FBI files, and we dug into family stories and histories of people that knew them, it painted a big difference in a painting of what happened than what you hear painted out here today and the narratives that you're probably listening to. So definitely a different story. And our book takes you down that path. We don't take the book. The book is not meant to tell you the history of Alcatraz. Okay, it's meant to tell you the three men who escaped, primarily two of them my uncles. But it's to go back and tell you how they got to Alcatraz, because that's a story in itself.
Yes. Yeah.
And so once you kind of understand the history of how they got there and what drove them into that life that they would later, live and pay their price for, and the people that they met along the way. And then we do delve into what's commonly known of the details of the escape. But even that, a lot of times most people only know the details from what they saw in the movie. But when you actually go into the FBI report, it's a totally different picture of what actually happens. And then, of course, what happened to them. The big $1 million question is, when they got down to the water, what happened? Well, our book tells you what happened. And not only do we tell you what happened and who helped them, but we also tell you where they went. And then we also, at the very end, give you proof that where we said they went, they went. And of course, everybody's heard of pretty much everybody has heard of the 1975 photo of them in Brazil, which has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt by multiple people, multiple companies, not something that the Anglin family hired. These were independent, hired by the U.S. government, U.S. Marshals, FBI. They've all looked at it, and have all come back with that is more than likely John Anglin in that photo. And the last time we actually had it done by Ident TV, who was hired by Josh Gates off of Expedition Unknown, 99.7% match. So I don't know. Will people start believing it if it comes out 99.8? I don't know.
Right.
Now maybe 99.7 is not good enough.
You wrote the book. We were talking to agents, and one of the questions we would often get is, well, why is the story like, how is it different than any other Alcatraz story that we've heard 1,000 times? The story is known, people know what happened. Yeah, they escaped. It was clever, but they escaped, and it's like, what else can you add to the story? And it was hard to convince them that we had a whole nother angle to the story from his family's connection to it. That for many, many years, because the FBI, Ken was talking earlier, was threatening the family with jail if they revealed that they knew anything about the escape and where they were hiding. So the family just collected to each other and said, we have to be the wall of silence. We can't interact with them. We can't share anything with them because we don't want to risk jail. And they would have prosecuted. And so for many, many, many years, they kept the secret. And it wasn't, like Ken said, until 2012 when they were invited to the 50th anniversary here, and just hearing the disparaging comments about his uncles and just holding a very negative view of them. He said, you know what, it's time for the family to tell the story. Right. And that's what he's been doing ever since. And then obviously the result is the book. That's the culmination of all that work.
I just think it's also so important that we do say that they were not violent people. They robbed banks. They stole a motorcycle. They were very poor. There's 14 children in the English family. That's a lot of kids.
Yeah, and if you think about poor today, and you multiply it by 100, you probably are coming close to how they used to live. I'll give you an example. So when my grandfather, who was a World War I vet, moves the family from Donaldsonville, Georgia, down to Ruskin, he moves all 14 members. Actually, at that time, there were only 12.
Yeah, there are 2 more
children. Yeah, two more would be born after they get there. But when they get there, they don't have he uses what little money he had saved up, and he purchases a farmland out in the middle of nowhere, dirt cheap, and him and his sons cut down the trees that are on the property, and they build the house that they're going to live in. Now, they build a 4-room house, not bedroom, 4 rooms. It consisted of a kitchen, a little small type living area, and 2 bedrooms. It had no plumbing. It had no electricity. They had a wood burning stove that they cooked on in the kitchen. They took baths on the back of the porch in wash tubs that they would use from the water that my grandmother washed their clothes in. That's where they took a bath at. They had no windows. They had openings. They had shutters that they would use to shut up in the winter. But in the summer, they would open them up. To school, my grandmother made their clothes from sackcloths that they used that they got flour in. So, but not every kid at that school was that poor. So think about the bullying that went on during that time frame. This just kind of sets the stage, that what happens later on, they finally just get tired of the bullying in school. One of the reasons why they left school at such an early age. And, not only that, but with this farm that this family, this was the only source of income they had. My grandfather would raise stuff, take it to the local farmer's market, and whatever he could make, that was the income for the family. All of the kids, I remember my mom's telling me this, that they would get up early in the morning. They had chores to do. They had to walk to school, and believe it or not, like a mile into Ruskin. They lived just outside of Ruskin. And after school, they would come home. They had to go back into the field to help their dad or whatever they were doing in the chores. Then it was that nightly get fed, get cleaned up. They do their homework by candlelight. They go to bed, and it starts all over again. So one can just picture in your mind John and Clarence at some point in time said, enough is enough. I don't want this lifestyle for me. I don't want to end up like my father. So they started turning to a life of crime, petty crime,
Right.
stealing car batteries, breaking into hardware stores, petty type kind of stuff. Nothing that endangered anyone. And they were earning really small, couple of dollars here, a couple of dollars there, So, yeah, they were not violent criminals.
Yeah, no.
None whatsoever.
And like that's a big thing about my podcast that I do is it's all about your childhood. And
Mhm.
that's what set them up.
Yes.
They were tired of being bullied. They wanted the life that they knew they weren't going to get any other way.
Yes.
And they got sent to 2 or 3 different prisons, and each time they always escaped.
Well, believe it or not, they started out going to reform school as 8 years old, as young as 8. They eventually quit going to school. They would skip school. They would go swimming rather than school. And even one of their teachers commented in a newspaper after the escape, oh, they would skip school. They would rather go swimming than they would to come to school. And so eventually the reform, truant officer would come and say, you got to put those kids in school, and their mother would try to send them, and they would skip, and eventually they went to reform school. But every time they would put them into a reform school, they would leave. They would break out. They would go home, and they would come back, pick them up, come back again, and eventually, as their crimes got a little bit more, they would go not to reform school but to boys' school, and they tried to reform them there. They break out, they go home, they come pick them up, they take them back. And eventually they would go into, as I got older, they started going into state prisons. Same thing happened. They would escape. They would wind up going home. The authorities already knew, okay, all we got to do is just go home and wait for a few minutes and they'll be back. And sure enough, and they would take them back to prison.
When I was reading that, I'm like, they are freaking Houdini. Like, literally, they have
yes, they did.
numerous times.
Yes.
Along with their other brother, Alfred.
Alfred. They
Yes.
all three were escape artists.
Yes.
And,
was just amazing. to
yes.
see.
I mean, even like when they get caught for the bank robbery, the reason in the federal time, the reason John gets 10 years and Alfred and Clarence gets 15 years is because Alfred and Clarence were already on the run from a previous escape that they had when they did the bank robbery. And so the federal judge realizes that they owe time. So he goes, I'm giving you an additional 5 years to make up what you owed already. And so that's the reason why they get 15 and John gets 10. Yeah, I mean, they were just, that's the reason I say Alcatraz was not their first escape by any means whatsoever. And it was not the first time they had ever tried to get out of prison. So, yeah.
One time they got caught was in the bread box.
That was when they were at Leavenworth.
Yeah.
So they're arrested for the bank robbery because John was with Helen, who they had met many years earlier in elementary school, love of his life. And so after they pull the job, he goes to her and said, we're leaving and we're never coming back, probably. And I want you to come with me. And she's with her husband at the time.
Yeah, she's married.
She was married. It was kind of a scandal at the time.
And she was going to leave him anyway.
And yeah, it was a rocky marriage. And she tells her husband, I'm leaving with John. And so she goes with him. And the brothers, of course, go as well. And they go to Ohio because Helen's father was living in Ohio. And they flee to there after the escape. And Helen calls her husband when they're on the run to say, I'm okay, everything's fine. Just want to let you know, don't worry about me. And he asks her where she is. And she tells him. Well, as soon as he gets off the phone, he calls the police, calls the authorities. Next day, they get arrested by the FBI. And then they get sent to, they get convicted soon after. And then eventually John and Clarence end up at Leavenworth. Alfred goes to Atlanta, thank you. And they go to Leavenworth. Well, eventually they get jobs working in the bakery at Leavenworth. And that was very strategic because they knew that the bakery was a very large bakery. And so they didn't bake just for the prison, but they baked for other prisons, other jails. So they would ship the bread to the jails. Well, they have these big canisters that they put the bread in and put it on a truck and then, send it to the local jails. Well, their plan was that Clarence was inside one of those canisters, one of the holders of the bread. Well, as it's being moved, unfortunately, they didn't take into account that a person weighs a lot more than bread does. So the guy's trying to move it. It's like, why is this thing so heavy? Well, that's how he gets caught.
Oopsie.
So then, and plus he'd also cut a hole in the top, and they saw, and so he gets caught. They didn't catch John. Either he didn't have time to get into his, or he had another idea. But the warden decides, you guys are just too much trouble. We try to, they knew their record. He had their records that they continually escape. So that's how they end up going to Alcatraz. That together they were sent there and then land here.
Yep.
Yes.
And then they're here.
And that's another thing. Like, really, it's a love story. It really, and she was wealthy, and she didn't care that John had no money.
Well, that's the reason why we titled one of the chapters Romeo and Juliet, because it really was like a Romeo and Juliet story. John meets her in elementary school, and her dad quickly tries to intervene and separate the two. John's from the wrong side of the railroad tracks, so to speak. He's very poor. They're already starting to get into trouble, fights at school, over their clothing. And so her father sees this. He's warned by teachers, because even the teachers were harassing the Anglin family boys and girls. And so one of the teachers tells Helen's father, you need to do something, separate this. For whatever reason, there were very few kids that took them in, the Anglin brothers, as they were. They didn't put a label on them, didn't judge them. One of them was Fred Breezy, one of them was Helen. And so Helen, I think, and John had this puppy crush together, like you would in elementary school. And Helen's father pretty much puts a kibosh to it, but they still stay friends. And as they get a little older, they're still hanging together, and eventually Helen's father ships her back off to where the family used to live in Ohio to go to school. It was a good way to separate the two, And so they're separated for many years as she finishes school. John, of course, eventually drops out of school. I think like 6th grade, and goes full-time working with his dad. I mean, that's pretty much most of the Anglin family. I don't think any of them maybe got past the 9th grade. I mean, every single one of them dropped out of school.
You and your mom?
Even my mom. My mom did not finish high school. No. I mean, it was a tough environment at that time. And so Helen eventually, after she graduates high school, and I'm not sure she actually attended college. I think she did some, but she eventually gets married, and they come back to Ruskin to live, because that's where her mom and dad are currently at. And John and her tried to pick up that romance all over again. She still was in love with him. She would tell us, even after the escape, when we used to be friends with her, that she was always in love with John, and John was always in love with her. And so, John realizes she's married, but she's telling John, I don't care anything for this man. We're having problems as it is. And John sees that as the opportunity that he's always wanted to kind of start, wounding her. And my mom tells a very strange story that one day her and her oldest sister, Werner, who actually is in the story in the book about helping pick up Clarence from an escape that occurred. But my mom and her oldest sister go over to Helen and her husband's house. And they were invited over. They were going to have tea. Well, she said when they walked into the living room, John is sitting in a chair and Clarence is in another chair. And Helen gets up and goes and gets into John's lap and kisses him. And her husband's right next door in another chair. And my mom said that her and her oldest sister, my aunt, went, we need to get out of here. And so they, they were like, this is not right. And so actually, I believe John and Helen were having an affair right there in the house with her husband. That's how bad it had probably gotten. They were living together, but they were not really They were not together. I'm talking about Helen and her husband. It was probably a, we're going to stay together, but
Medium
that
of convenience.
convenience might have been because Helen came from a family that had money. I know nothing about her former husband. He might not have had any money, and that's the reason why he was with her. So I don't know anything about him. All I know is that she was in love with John. John was in love with her. And that is the reason why when they were heading to Ohio after they had robbed the bank, they had come home, they had spent a couple of evenings with the family, their family, the Anglin family. Some important information happens around that meeting. They had the money in the back of the car in a safe. I mean, not a safe, but a trunk. So they get up the next morning, they're heading to Ohio. Their plan was to go there, and then they were eventually heading to Mexico, we believe. They were going to take that money from the bank robbery, which was $19,000, which was a lot of money, considered, today's terms. And so he goes by and he picks Helen up, and as they're leaving, I can just imagine the husband just fuming, here my wife is going out and getting in a car and driving off with another man.
Right.
And Clarence is with his girlfriend, and Alfred is with his wife, who we later find out is only like 16 years old. He's 20 something, 29. He married a 16-year-old.
Oh my God.
I mean, it gets better. And so, they get to Ohio, and Helen's father eventually turns them in, and they get arrested. And just a few short days after that, they're in Montgomery. No, is it Montgomery, Alabama? Yeah, Montgomery, Alabama, where they go for their federal trial. The federal trial is, and the total, we have the manuscript from the federal trial in the book. It is amazing. Think about this today. They try them, they convict them, and they sentence them in the same day.
Yeah, that doesn't.
The exact same day. 2 days later, they're sitting in Atlanta to start their federal prison term. The very next day, the state of Alabama said, that's not good enough. They bring them back to the state of Alabama, and they charge them for the exact same crime on state charges. And they tried to give them the death penalty, because it was the death penalty in the state of Alabama for robbing a bank. So luckily, you'll read a story about how my grandfather was able to, because they have no money. This is a family that when they went up to the trial, because they didn't attend the federal trial, but they did attend the state trial, they slept in their cars because they had no money to even get a hotel room. So my grandmother slept in the cars. But so my grandfather, there's a very interesting story in the book about how he gets the money to hire a lawyer, $500, to hire a lawyer on the way out of town to represent his three sons. And that prevented the death penalty. And they wound up getting 25 years each, which was to be served non-concurrent with the federal term. And they were threatened by the prosecutor. My family and all of my mom, my grandmother, and all this heard them threaten them that if they ever made it back to the state of Alabama, they would never leave alive. Alfred never leaves alive. True to their word. True to their word. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why Whitey Bulger says in one of his letters that John and Clarence wasn't escaping Alcatraz; they were escaping Alabama. And Frank Morris wasn't escaping Alcatraz; he was escaping Angola, because same thing was fixing to happen to him. They had threatened him. If you ever come back, you won't live alive. And so it's a you can kind of see where the double jeopardy was being applied to them, and that was that unfairness that they saw in the state part of this. That's when all of the escapes from after the bank robbery, that's when they started escaping, right then. In fact, they even tried to escape before they sent them back to prison after they did the state trial. Clarence tried to do something. It's not really recorded on what he was planning, but he was already planning something. And so at that point, they sent Alfred back to Atlanta, They send John to Lewisburg, and they send Clarence to Leavenworth. John tries an escape in Lewisburg, which lands him now in Leavenworth. They both try to do an escape, which lands him now in Alcatraz. And that's how they end up here.
Another thing that I love about it is each time they escaped, they always went home to let mama know that
Yes,
they
they did.
were okay.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Every time. Didn't matter from where, we have to let mom know we're okay. Like they were good boys. They just men, I guess we should say.
And it might have been why when the escape occurs, the FBI shows up the very next day at my grandmother and grandfather's house and starts interviewing the family. Like, they just escaped the day before, or actually that night. There's no way, even if they were on an airplane, they would have made it to Ruskin by that time. But they undoubtedly knew where they're coming home. At some point in time, they're going to notify mom and dad that I'm okay. But luckily, they listened not only to their father after the state prison when he told them the trial, if you ever get out, he actually tells them this. If you ever get out, you leave this country and you never come back. And Whitey Bulger told them the same thing. When you leave, don't ever turn around. Don't ever make contact with your family. And they, as we said before, made that fatal mistake when they contacted their brother Alfred.
Right.
And it cost him his life. And I believe that was a turning point for them where they said, never again. We won't ever make contact. The only brother who knew where they were at and kept them informed of the family, that was how they communicated.
Uncle
Man. He was the only one, and he saw what happened. You know, he saw his brother die in prison. He knew that they had contacted him. And Uncle Man, knowing that, and all the threats that the FBI gave the family, he was pretty much the same way. No one can ever know about this. I'm the only one. If anybody's going to get in trouble, I will be the one getting in trouble.
Right.
And so that's how it stayed for years. Years.
Still have the cards that they would send?
Yes, I have them. I actually have. Yes, I do. I have those cards.
Yeah, dead people can't send Christmas cards. Just want to say that every year. So clearly they did not die.
Nope. Every single Christmas, my grandmother would get a Christmas card from John and Clarence. This is after the escape. And she kept every one of them, and we have them. You know, we don't have the postcards, so we can't actually say the date on them. So there's no date on them. There's no postmark. There's no postmark, but we do have them. And along with that, every Mother's Day, her birthday. I'm sorry, it was her birthday. She got roses, and it lasted all the way up until the day she died. And on the day of her death, when they buried her, I was at the funeral. The family comes back to the house, and there's 12 dozen roses at the house. No one knew how they got there. So somehow they coordinated all that.
Didn't they buy her a washing machine and a dryer?
With the money that they stole from the bank.
They loved mama.
Yeah.
They took care of her. She didn't even know how to accept that.
Well, my grandmother and grandfather were very religious people. All the family, you know, if you lived in southern Florida, that was a very Pentecostal type kind of environment. All of the family went to, you know, a Church of God. It was very Pentecostal. They were very religious. My grandmother and grandfather were, or at least my grandmother. So much for my grandfather. You know, he had his beer and his cigarettes. But you know, she washed. The thing I asked for 14 kids for years. She washed clothes by her hands, and so I can imagine John and Clarence. They got all this money now, and they go, "We want to make my mom's life a little easy." And so they stop on the way at a Sears and Roebuck, and they buy her a washer and dryer and have it delivered to the house. And it actually arrives before they get there. And my grandmother quickly figures out, like when they show up to drop it off, the delivery people, she's like, "What are you doing? You know, this doesn't belong to me." And they go, "Oh yeah, you're Rachel Anglin, right?" And she goes, "Well, yeah, but I didn't order this." And she quickly realizes that it was bought. She used to call it blood money. or dirty money, dirty money. And she said, no, 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 you load that back up on the truck. I don't want it. And she made them take it back off.
She knew that John and Clarence didn't have.
Yeah, she knew that John and
have
Clarence
that kind of money.
No, she knew John and Clarence didn't have that kind of money. Something had happened. Something bad had happened. She didn't know what. She knew John and Clarence did not have that kind, and Alfred did not have that kind of money to buy her a washing dryer, and she would have none of it. So that just shows you, you know, they love their mom. They love their dad. They love their mom more than they did the dad, because every letter they wrote home was always to mom.
Yep.
Not to
Without
mom and
exception.
dad, it was to mom.
Right.
So yeah.
That just like warmed my heart when I would read that. I was just like, you know, here we got these bank robbers, big, scary men. They're like,
Yeah.
Mom, we just got to let you know we're good. We think about you. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
Just let you know they weren't bad people.
No, they were not. And that's what I hate about when people walk through this prison, is that they pretty much go to and stand in front of their cells, and all they see are two criminals. They see the wanted posters, and all they can think about is these were bad men. They don't know what they did. You know, they undoubtedly they were bad because they're here, and so they don't really have any context that they were brothers and sisters. They were sons of somebody, right? They were friends to other people. They loved. They had girlfriends that cared about them, and so you know there was a bigger story about them than what most people in here will ever even know, unless they read the book and find out what actually happened.
I don't read books, and I read that whole book in 3 days. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
I could not put it down.
Yeah.
It made me laugh. It made me cry. It gave me anxiety. Like it has all of it in it. It
Yeah.
really does. It's a great book.
The goal is to let the public know what happened, not so much the park rangers.
Right.
They've got their story, they've got their narrative, and you know, I've even said before, I could drag up John and Clarence right here in a coffin, and they would still believe that I planted something and did something that was that's not really them, that's fake.
You clone them.
I cloned them somehow. So you're never going to convince this group of people
Right.
in any way.
But there was more proof, because it was in Mexico that they found the Zippo lighter. and
Well,
they
it was
found-
Brazil.
Brazil.
Oh, that was Brazil. I thought
Yes.
that was okay.
Yeah, that was in Brazil.
Yeah, that didn't exist there. So how would it get there? They found a penny.
A U.S.
Yeah.
penny.
Yeah. We did a show with Josh Gates, Expedition Unknown, Ken and I. We were invited to talk about the Alcatraz story. That the book didn't exist at the time, but we were starting it, and so a lot of the material that we have in the book was incorporated into the show. And there's some photographs that Fred Breezy, that Ken mentioned, was a childhood friend, and he was the one that ferried them from after the escape to Mexico. And then, of course, we talked about how Alfred died, and they were afraid that he had revealed their location. So then Fred Breezy again flies them down to Brazil, where they eventually end up. And there's a small town called Monteiro Lobato, where Fred Breezy had taken a picture of their farmhouse, taken a picture of the brothers, some pictures of kind of the property that they had. And when we went down there to that place, there was a gentleman who remembers as a boy stories of 3 Americans who went to Monteiro Lobato. Now, Monteiro Lobato is in the heart of Brazil. It's literally in the middle of Brazil. It's very rural, very remote area. And it's remote now. 60 years ago, it was even more remote.
Yes.
And he remembers 3 Americans hiding in the mountains. And so we went to the spot where they hid. And the show provided metal detectors for us. So we're, looking around to see if we can find anything. Well, that's how we found the lighter. And Clarence was a smoker. He was a lifelong smoker. The 75 picture, I think you mentioned, he has the cigarettes in his shirt pocket, which he did. We have other pictures of him with the cigarettes.
Same position as cigarettes.
He would have a lighter. We found a shell casing. So it makes sense that they would carry guns with them to protect themselves, because you're in a very rural area, and there could be bandits or thieves or intruders of some kind. So you want to be able to protect yourself. But in my mind, the most important thing that they found was the penny. It was a Lincoln penny, 1951. This is in early 1970s. They would have been there. And of course, we found it in 2022. This mountain is in the middle of a jungle.
A mile up.
Yeah, it's a mile up from the base of the mountain to get to the top, and it's literally cut. I mean, the path it's a dirt path this wide, and it's literally cut out from the jungle. We go up to the very top. There is nothing there. There is nothing for any. We have who live there today, and we said, back in the 1970s, did Americans ever come to this place, just to visit or be around? No. There's no Americans never came here except for the three.
Except for those three.
Except for the three. So it's not like others were there. They never came because there's nothing for them to come to. It's just a small little teeny town.
There would be nowhere like a hotel to stay at.
Yeah, there's nothing. And so it's not absolute proof it's John and Clarence and Frank, but it really has to be, because why would three Americans be hiding in the mountains?
Right.
At that time that we know John and Clarence and Frank were there.
And somebody fed them. Was that back in Mexico though?
Well, so no, while they're in Brazil, we found out through this local person who remembers the three Americans. Back then Brazil didn't have, like in these little small towns, they didn't have like a local police. So none of these towns were policed by the local authorities. Each town pretty much kind of went to someone and said, or, hey, how would you like to be the one in charge? So we're going to hire you to keep the peace. It was pretty, and some towns didn't even have that. And so this particular individual was, when he found out there were three Americans up on this hill, he goes up to check it out. Well, they convince him, because each of them have $25,000 each. And so that's a lot of money back in that time. So they hire him, or they pay him, and he brings them supplies. But that's only lasts for like a couple of months, according to the local. After about 3 months, they leave. Well, we find out they actually buy a house, or they live in a house inside of Monteiro Lobato. And then we also find out later through their friend that as you come out of that mountain range into the valley, it's all farmland. I mean, just miles and miles of farmland. Well, back then in that time frame, the way that you got land, it was pretty much like in the old Western days when they had the migration. You went out, and according to Breezy, if you went out and you staked out a section of land, and if you were able to hold that land and maintain it for 2 years, you then took that certificate back to the state of to the country of Brazil, and they would deed that land to you. So they purchased that land from someone that had already done that. It was an Englishman who was living there, and his wife had gotten killed by a spider, and he was going back to England. So they purchased it from him. So that all that farmland, they take their money and they pull it together and they purchase it. And then at some point in time, they met women, or ladies, and they undoubtedly fell in love with them, whoever it was, and they married, and they all had children, and they turned that farm. You got to think, they came from a farming environment, which I find so ironic, is that the lifestyle that they didn't think they wanted when they were children is what they wind up with in the end. And they start a really nice farm, huge farm. They had people working for them. They had a huge amount of I think farm equipment, like
Tractors.
They had like 9 or 8 like John Deere tractors, and that they used on the farm. They raised cattle. They had horses. They raised this crop that they sold, and so you can kind of see that this life that they all of a sudden now had is what they wound up with the rest of their life.
They did a better job.
They did a better job. It's like I said, Alcatraz did what it was supposed to have done. It transformed them from this criminal environment to a life that was,
Honest.
an honest life. And, it also separated them from their family, which is what prison does, right? Separates you from your family. But in their case, it separated them for life. And so that was the cost of this escape for them, was pretty much a life sentence.
Right. Yeah. No matter what,
Yeah.
they still did a life sentence.
Yeah, it was a life sentence. So it's sad, but in the end, I'm very happy that they didn't spend their life here, and or in some other prison that they might have got killed in. So,
Right.
so in the end, I'm happy that what happened to them. In the end, I'm happy that it ended the way that it did. So
I play in my head, like, I wonder if Helen would have never made that phone call, where would they have been? If they didn't break out of here with Alcatraz.
well, they had gotten away with the robbery. No one knew who had robbed that bank. They couldn't figure it out because they had stole a car. They robbed the bank. They went and dropped the stolen car off. They had hid some miles outside of town. They jumped in John's car and they drove, away. So no one knew who they were. It was a really, really small town, and they would have gotten away with it if Helen had not, if it hadn't been for Helen and her husband turning them in. So
I know,
yeah,
like,
they would have gotten
what
away
could
with
have
it.
happened? You know what I mean? Like, maybe
Who
they would
knows?
have ended up
Who knows?
together. It's
Who
just,
knows?
it's crazy to go.
Well, their ultimate destination was Mexico. Even then they were heading to Mexico. They probably would have continued the drug running with Cohen, and then at some point in time something might have happened. So really, in the end, what happened for a reason. I believe. I always believe things happen for a reason.
Oh, me too.
And so, for whatever the situation, it ended the way it did, and it ended well. So that's all you can really hope for in life.
They got to live.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but as Ken mentioned earlier, they grew up very poor. Made fun of, harassed, bullied because they were at the low rung of society, bottom rung, and they just wanted to be respected. They wanted to be appreciated for who they were, and it was like Ken said. You have John. I mean, I'm sorry. You have Helen and Fred Breezy, just being their friends, being people
Yep.
who just accepted them for who they were. And that's what they got. And what they wanted at the beginning of life, they got at the end of their life. They were respected in their community. They were valued. They had wives, they had children, grandchildren, most likely. They had a good farming life, because Brazil's great for farming.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so they got what they wanted in the end. It took a long time, but they did get it.
That's so true. It's kind of a happy end.
Yeah, it's definitely a happy ending. It's a sad ending that they didn't get a chance to spend time with their other siblings, and it's sad that a lot of the nephews and nieces never really got to meet them. And but in the end, it was a happy ending. It was better than what happened to Alfred.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it was sad, but it had a good ending, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, throughout anyone's life, really, you could play the coulda, woulda, shouldas, but
Right.
what's meant to happen is going to happen. So,
And the bright side of the story is that Mike and I are very close with the help of other people and tracking down their children, my cousins, and so we'll be able to when we do connect with them, we'll be able to hear the stories. They'll hopefully be able to share the stories of their dad or their grandfather, and they'll be able to share photos of them. So we'll get to see, hopefully they took photos, and which I'm sure they did. And so we'll get to know them in a different way, but we'll get to learn about what happened to them, and that'll be another good side of the story.
right. I always wondered, you think they told them, or do you think they kept that?
That's a $1 million question.
We don't
Right.
know. Does the family really know who they are? We don't know.
We don't know that. We won't know that until we find them. And like I said, we're close. We're very close to tracking down someone. And so we really hope in the near future to have a part 2 to the book or an update to the book. And we can definitely close the case, and
To everyone's satisfaction.
I mean, they will know where they're buried at. And so, if they allow us, we'll have them exhumed. We'll grab the DNA off of it, but their DNA would be pretty much to say, hey, this is my cousin. But getting their actual DNA would, I don't know whether, like I said, I don't know whether you'll ever convince these people here that this is them. They'll probably be like, well, I got to go down and see them. And even if I saw them, I wouldn't believe it. So
Right.
we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Right. They got a story to sell and they're sticking to it.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
We've done like 24 movies.
Yes. Yes. So
on both.
yeah. So whenever we were down with Josh Gates in Brazil, I tried to sneak my DNA into they have a private database down there that's just for Brazilians. You get in trouble if you try to put your DNA into this database. It's just for Brazilians. And so I tried to kind of do it, and they found out about it and said, you don't ever do this again. And so we thought this was pretty much over with. And so, but then I started working with the former U.S. Marshal that I worked with in one of the shows, and we took 23andMe and an ancestry DNA test on my mom. We used her, and they've put it out into the they call it like a net. So they're setting out there with this net, and they're hoping that if one of the family members at some point in time goes outside of the DNA within Brazil and uses ancestry DNA or 23andMe, and it would then get caught in this net that they've set up. And so we'll actually be able to say, hey, yeah, we got a hit. So far, we haven't had.
There have been a lot of family hits, but they're more remote,
Yeah.
fifth cousins, fourth cousins,
But nothing,
I'm sorry, not cousins, generation, like your fourth generation, kind of.
But nothing from Brazil yet.
And because his mother is the closest living relative, being a sibling, so you have to have a very close connection, not somebody who's like a third cousin,
Right.
living in Europe somewhere.
Yeah,
there's
so
a lot of hits,
yeah.
but not the good hits we want.
So the U.S. Marshals set up this. They set it up, not us. So they're supposed to let us know. Now I have access to their account, so I can see when matches occur. But they're supposed to be notified when it occurs and it's them or someone down there. And of course, they're supposed to let us know, supposedly,
Right.
if that actually
Yeah,
happens.
the closest hit that we have so far is somebody living in Mexico.
Right.
But it's not a close match.
No. It's like a third cousin, type removed
But I
twice.
wonder if sometimes that's always correct, because I have 23andMe and it matched me with a cousin, but then it said that my son was his first cousin once removed, like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. If that's
Yeah.
my kid, that would be your second cousin.
Yeah.
So I wonder how correct it is. So you might want to look into them.
Well, we were able to, with the help of this person we're working with in Brazil, with Ancestry DNA, you can download the test, the result of the DNA test. And so we've given it to them, and he's been able through the Brazilian government to get the okay, not so much to submit hers into this database, but to have it compared against what's already in there. So, and from what I understand, when they started this database, they pretty much any newborn that is born down there, they don't even ask you. They take that DNA and it's inserted into this database. So any of their grandchildren that had children, would be in this database.
Right.
And so he's hoping that they can take that strand and look at all the ones that are inside this national one and find a hit.
That would be very cool. I thought they should do that here. I get it; it's like a breach, but think of how many unsolved cases we could have actually solved if we did that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, like I said, part 2 coming.
Yeah, no, that would be so interesting. Absolutely. Do you have the picture in the book? Yeah, you do.
Oh yeah, of them when they were in Brazil.
Yes.
Yes,
it's in the back.
It was told to us it was 1975, but and it's pretty much in the 70s. We're not real sure if it was 70, sometimes between 70 and 75. And that is John Anglin on that side, and that's Clarence, his brother. And the U.S. Marshals took not only John, but they took several photos of him throughout his life, and they were able to come up eventually at some point in time with, like Josh Gates in 2022, a 99.7% match on him.
Clarence, because of the way he's turned and you really can't see his ears. But looking at other photos, they were able to come very close to his hairline. And they came with a very good match, but not as close as John. But like I've always told people, if that's John, that's Clarence.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
That's his brother that he's standing beside. And so, yeah, it's definitely, to me, I consider that a closed case. But to people that run this prison, or this used to be prison, it's never going to be a closed case for them. I don't think, even if we show them the actual bodies, I don't think they would believe it.
Right.
They somehow believe that the family staged that photo. Like we went down into Brazil in 1970 and staged this thing.
Photoshop did not exist back then.
Not to the level that you would have been able to pull something right out.
I have another question about the U.S. Marshals. The U.S. Marshals.
Yes.
But they couldn't actually get them. Was it because they were in Brazil and they just weren't back?
The book is going to give you some avenues that I've always believed that the U.S. I don't know, I won't say the U.S. Marshals. I've always believed that the FBI has always known what happened to them. They always knew where they went, and they knew where they were at, even in 1975. I mean, me and Mike are not some this special group of people that have figured something out from the FBI files that they've had for years. And we were able to read something just recently, that they have had for years. Right. So you can't tell me that we figured something out that, oh my God, nobody else was able to figure out.
Right. We're not that smart.
We're not that smart. And so they have always known where they were at. And so I'm not so sure about the U.S. Marshal, but I do know when they took that photo and they compared it and they figured out it was them, the U.S. Marshals did go down there. They sent a team of people down there, but they didn't know exactly where to look. We figured out where that actual town was. That's something I believe we had on them. They didn't know exactly where it was at. And they didn't go up to that mountain. We are the ones who went up there. They didn't even know that it even existed. So, I would always say they had a leg up on us and was 3 steps ahead of us until the very end. I think we've discovered stuff in the very end that they didn't even know about.
So you're smarter than you think.
Maybe so.
Give yourself some credit.
Although,
Maybe so.
I mean, the Marshals could have been up there, since then. Who knows if anybody's gone up to that mountain?
But we were the first ones up there.
Right, but
That's
to find more
amazing.
stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Who knows?
I
Yeah.
mean, right? Who knows? Because it was buried.
Well, now they know the town now, Monteiro Lobato, and they know the area where the farm's at. But that mountain we went up is not really in Monteiro Lobato. It's outside of it. So unless you know where that's at,
And
I do.
And there are a lot of mountains.
And there's a lot of mountains in there. They have not gone to that mountain. Right now, I know that me and Mike and Expedition Unknown are the only people who knows where it's located.
You think they've gone back since?
Expedition Unknown?
Uh-huh.
No, not yet.
No.
I think they would go back if we had something. If we find relatives, Josh Gates has already said, "You better call me. I'm going with you." So I don't know. We don't know whether or not we'll include him or not.
Let's see.
Just bring me.
Okay. How's your Portuguese?
I am Portuguese.
Oh, there you go.
Good.
Well, you would know way more than I do. I learned like 3 different words: beer, coffee, and restroom.
Well, what was the word for thank you? I couldn't remember the word for thank you.
It was
obrigado.
obrigado.
Obrigado. Was
Obrigado.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I did learn that one. I practiced a bunch of stuff on the way down.
Bathroom with essentials. That's really all you
Yes,
need.
yeah. Beer, food, and bathroom. Maybe a hotel.
Maybe.
So yeah, that's pretty much the story. If anybody, like, I would encourage anyone who's watching the podcast, if you go out, if you really want to know what happened, not based upon what people said in a movie or what someone said in a newspaper article. I mean, we use the FBI files to verify every single thing we're talking about here.
Of course, family.
And
Right.
some other documents that
And some other documents, but a lot of it's backed up based upon the FBI investigation itself. So if you really want to know what happened, you check this book out, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
And you won't put it down. Be prepared. It's so good. It was very well written.
Yeah.
For
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So,
AI, you gotta love AI.
no AI at this point.
You don't tell your secrets.
So they can buy it off of Amazon. You can get it from Barnes and Nobles. And I believe there's, how many other locations can you get it from?
A lot.